Hello everyone and welcome to the O-Scale Canadian National Railways Sanmore Subdivision. Greetings, small railroaders and rail fans alike. My name is Serge Lebel, and I would like to welcome you to my O-Scale layout, the Canadian National Railways Sanmore Subdivision. And this is episode number 6. It is now early September 2019, and I have a pretty good episode for you guys today. It's about the signaling, which I've been mentioning a few times before in my previous episodes. Which I didn't really want to get into detail before because the articles were being written, they were being slowly published, and I didn't want to leak anything out. But now the articles started, at least part 1 is being published right now, and there's a few more articles on the way. So today I will be showing you the signaling system and what it is, what it does exactly in terms of operations. Now, just a word on the articles. The article is on the signaling, how to make your own, how to scratch build your own brass signals, how to make your own brass etching equipment, how to make the scratch build the CTC machine, which is made out of fiberboard. And about how to wire everything up. Now, it's not just for O-Scale, it's for any scale. So if you guys are interested in learning how I made my signals and reading the articles, you can subscribe to the O-Scale Resource Magazine. It's free, it's online, you can look it up, the O-Scale Resource Magazine. And my first part article has been published in the September-October 2019 issue. First part is mostly just an introduction to signaling. I sort of describe different signals, at least the different signals that I'm using here on my layout. It's not about every possible signals that exist because there's a bunch of signals out there depending on the railroad that you're modeling. But if you're modeling like I am with the Canadian Railway Operating Rules, the CROR, these signals apply. So I describe how to read the signals, where to put them, how to use them, where to put them on your layout. And there's a bunch of little exercise in the article that you can do. It's kind of fun. You just walk around your layout and you take notes and you prepare yourself for your own signaling system. So if you guys are interested, you can look it up. Okay, first let's take a look at the components that build up the signaling system. And one of the very first things that you need if you have a signaling system is a signal maintainer guy. so there you go. There's my signal maintainer guys. They're working on something. I don't know what they're working on, but they're always working on something. So looking at the signals, here you have one controlled location, one OS section, where you have the signals. Signals are all scratch built out of brass. You can see the signals here, and home signal right here. Now these signals, I designed each and every part of the signal in the computer. I made some negatives that were exposed on UV curable trim film that was on brass sheets, and I then etched the brass parts, which you have here. These are all the different parts that I etched out of brass for my signals. You see the targets, you see the hoods, the platforms, and then of course you have the tubing for the mast, which is just brass tubing, the signal base, and then you add on your LEDs and your wiring. So basically that's how my signals were all built, all scratch built. And also you have a little signal bungalow. Now this one is not finished, mind you. It's just it's made out of laser board, so I just lasered it and put it together briefly. I'll try to insert a photo here of a finished bungalow for you. Okay, so because you have a signal bungalow in real life, which is represented here just as a model, I decided that all the components for the signaling system, instead of being crammed underneath the layout, would be inside a relay box, which would simulate something like a signal bungalow. So my relay box, which is very simple, it's just a box made out of masonite that was painted, and the relay box is inserted in the fascia of the layout, which eventually, you know, there will be some curtains here, so you won't see the underside of the layout, and then this is going to look much better. But yeah, the relay box has all the components for the all the electronic components for the signal, and all the components in there are for one section, for this OS section, or what is called a controlled location. And what is a controlled location? It's a spot on a railroad that has signals in opposite direction, like we have here. And these signals are controlled by the CTC, by the dispatcher, I should say by the RTC, by the rail traffic controller. So this is a controlled location, and this is the relay box for this controlled location. Now this is usually restricted access by the maintenance, the communications and the signals personnel, but guess what? I stole their key. So we'll sneak inside here. And there you go. Now this looks a lot worse than it is. In reality, there's a bunch of wires there, and I'm sorry, I'm not a very neat wiring guy. Wiring is really not my passion. I just do it because I have to. So I'm sorry if it's not looking too good there, but it works. And the way it works is, I'll try to explain this in a nutshell here. The control location has a detector card, which is the only part of this signaling system that I did not build myself. I actually purchased these from Circuits for Tracks. And this little card here is powerful enough that when it detects a train on the block, it's powerful enough to trip a small 5-volt relay. And that's the whole thing on which my entire signaling system is based on. It's just relays. When I started designing and working in this signaling system, 18 months ago, I knew absolutely squat about electronics. I mean, I had resistors and LEDs here. That's about as far as I knew about electronics. And of course, looking on the internet, I did find some tutorials, and I found, you know, parts for just about anything that you can imagine you want to build. Soon realized that electronics in itself is a hobby. But I didn't want to go too far in that, because I have, you know, I have a hobby here. I have for years and years of work. So I figured, you know, I'll just learn enough to build my signaling system, and I'm sure that the ones among you who are electronically inclined, I should say, are probably laughing your heads off, because, you know, this probably could have been done a lot simpler if I knew more. But, you know, I know about relays now, relays and diodes. So that was enough for me. So in a nutshell, how this thing works is you have the current that's coming. You have the 5-volt, the common, and the 12-volt, which are from a computer power supply, which I have here. There's one computer power supply for each relay box on the layout. And the 12-volt current goes through a series of relays. Let me see if I can show you the relays here. Now, the current comes first off to the traffic relays, which are these ones right here. Now, the traffic relays, left and right, this is the left and right switch on the CTC machine. So the dispatcher decides which traffic he wants to prioritize, either traffic traveling left on his board or traveling right on his board, which can be north, south, east, or west in real life, in the field. So the traffic comes to these relays. So let's say if the traffic switch is set for left, then the current can go through that relay, and then it reaches the turnout position. So if the turnout position is in normal and traffic is set to left, then the current will flow right through here, and it'll go and light up the LEDs that I want to light up on the signals, on the 3 signals on the control location. Same goes if the switch is in reverse and traffic is set for left. Like right now, if we look at our OS section, at our control location, we have one signal that's favored here, because it's only one signal at a time, of course. So if we look at this, if we analyze this, we have traffic prioritized for left bound, and this here is the main line. So it's left bound, and the turnout is lined normal. Let's look here. Turnout is lined normal. So left bound, normal. Oh, there you go. That's the very first relay up there. So this relay, this wire activates a green over red for this signal, saying this is clear signal. You have to go ahead. On the siding, because the turnout is not routed for the siding, yeah, you're lighting up the red signals. And of course, opposite direction, you have to have an absolute stop here, because you don't want to have a cornfield meet. So once a train occupies the OS, this controlled location, that's when the little detector card does its job, and it trips this relay right here, and this relay activates a tortoise switch machine, which is under the layout right here. Now this one is not, it's It's not there to control a turnout. I'm just using the tortoise for the connections on it, because it's a good way to use connectors, because relays will not stay on once the current is off. A tortoise, once it moves to one side or the other, it makes contacts and it stays where it is. So this, what it does is it cuts the current that's going to all these LEDs right there. It cuts all the current going to all the LEDs, and it brings a separate 12 volt current to all red LEDs, but not the same red LED, not the same red as the LEDs that you are seeing in this signal. I don't know if I can explain this clearly. Each red LED is a 3-part LED. It has 3 separate LEDs in it. Very, very small. You know, it's very hard to see. So there's one set of these red LEDs that's wired to the tortoise switch machine, and the tortoise switch machine will activate reds only. So that way your control location drops to red, and it stays there until the dispatcher resets the OS upstairs on the CTC machine, and then the tortoise moves back to its original position, and the other 12 volt current goes through and lights up whatever signals that needs to be lighted up. So basically, I don't know if I'm if I'm clear with this. The article is probably better to explain what I'm explaining here. Pardon my English. I'm doing my best here, but this is how the system works. Now we'll go upstairs and take a look at the CTC machine. Okay, we are now upstairs in my workshop, where I've set up a little corner for the CTC machine, which you are seeing right here. Now the CTC machine, usually those machines back in the 1950s, those were made out of metal. Those were very heavy metal cabinets. And since I don't have any tools to work with metals, but I do have tools to work with wood, different types of wood, I decided that I would try to make one out of wood. So this unit is made out of MDF, or what is called a medium density fiberboard, which is just wood fiber. And this stuff is nice because there's no grain to it, and it's very soft. It cuts easily on the table saw. It sands easily, so you know, you can do a pretty decent job. And what I did is I made the cabinet, and then I used some automotive paints from automotive shops, some base coat. So I had some base coat mixed for the proper colors here. And then I purchased a spray gun, an automotive spray gun at the shop there where I purchased my paint. And I spray painted the whole thing, a couple of coats, sanding between coats. Well, actually I had some primer before, a couple of coats of primer, sanded between the coats of primer. Then the base coat, and I sanded between the coats of base coat also. And then I used some automotive clear, with the same type of clear coat that you have on your car or your pickup truck. And I spray painted that clear. Now, that's one part that I should have probably gone to an automotive body shop and have them shoot the clear coat for me, because I did that in February, and I was in my woodworking shop, and of course it's a woodworking shop. It's very dusty, So if you look closely at my machine there, you'll see that there's a lot of little dust particles in my clear coat, you know. But you know, still, it still almost looks like a metal cabinet, enough for me to think that it's a metal cabinet. And if I believe it's a metal cabinet, then it's good enough. Now the components on there, all the CTC levers are from Rick's products. Those are all plastic, injection molded plastic levers. But once painted, you know, you'd never know it's plastic. I believe there are some companies who actually make those out of metal. I did not look for those because I already had the Rick's products levers, which I had purchased a couple of years ago. So I decided to use these. Now the other switches are just, you know, basic switches that you can get, you know, from any electronic store. And all the lights are LEDs. And I'm using LED light holders, which I painted silver to match. And the rest of all the little labeling, like you see here, that's just I designed these on the computer, and I printed the black part on decal paper, so it's just black on a clear background. And I took little pieces of aircraft grade plywood, which I cut, and then I spray painted silver, and I applied the decals to them. And you know, that does a decent job there. So basically, this is the CTC machine. Now let me just get set up here, and I'll show you a demonstration how this thing works. Okay, I just realized that in order for me to give you a demonstration of how the CTC machine works, I have to back the camera far enough away so that you can see the machine and the monitor here. And that way you can't really tell which lever I'm working with. So I decided to show you all the components of the CTC machine before. So what you're looking at up here, the black part, is what is called the track line display. This is a single line display of the main line and the sidings on my layout. And each controlled location has a light here that tells if the controlled location is occupied. That light will turn on, telling the dispatcher that this section here is occupied. Now the lines that are blacked out, as you can see, there's some lines that are blacked out. These are because these blocks are not detected. Like in Campbellstoke here, this is a yard. So of course the yard is not detected. You're under authority of the yard master when you're entering a yard. But the control location at each end are part of the main line. They're part of the CTC machine. So this is the track line display up here. And with each control location, you have a series of levers. Now, if you look at the one row of lever right here is for one control location. So if you're looking at control point 1 right here, which is the siding in Campbellstoke, well, the switch is numbered odd numbers, which are the control location number. So this here is the switch lever. Then you have the signal lever. I'm sorry if the LEDs are bright there There you go. The signal lever to control the prioritize traffic left or right. And then you have the code, the send code button. Now, the way a real CTC machine works is the dispatcher will set the turnout, the position of the turnout. He will set which direction he wants to prioritize the traffic, and then he will hit the send code button. Now, these old machines, the way they used to work is by coding. Now, coding, you have a bunch of relays in the bottom of the cabinet here, and each signal bungalow that you saw on my layout will actually, each real life signal bungalow have a unique code, just like a DCC locomotive. So the CTC machine will, when you send the code, it will send a series of clicks. And these clicks are interpreted by the signal bungalows. So one signal bungalow will recognize the address and say, oh, this is for me. And all the other clicks are, this is what the dispatcher wants you to do. I want you to line the switch in reverse, and I want you to prioritize traffic for right-bound traffic. So in real life, this is how it works. Of course, I'm not working with coding and relays because that would not be very practical. My knowledge of it is not deep enough for that. But these are just switches, regular switches, rotary switches. So if under normal operation, you just when you position a switch, the current goes through and the action is done right away. Now, what I decided to do, since I wanted to simulate a real CTC machine, is I am delaying this this action by having the current going through a push button switch, which is the this switch right here, which is this actually the send code. So as long as I'm not pressing this button here, whatever I'm doing here does not affect the layout. It's not happening downstairs until I push this button here. And because I wanted to have the CTC machine to have a prototype feel as much as possible, I actually found some coding, some CTC coding on the internet, and I had a company made some sound cards for me. So the push button here also activates the sound card, so you actually hear the coding, even if it's not real. You actually hear the coding, and by adding some circuitry, which I purchased on eBay, which are just delays, I actually get the prototype delays between the time the code is sent and the time that the confirmation code is resent to the CTC machine. So I know that sounds a bit complicated, but I'll give you a demonstration and I'll try to explain. So basically, each row here is one controlled location on my layout, one switch. So those, you'll see here, there are two sidings here that are not live yet. It's because I'm not done with my signals yet, and I'm not really done with the fascia. So those two sidings here, Douglas Cove, the yard in Douglas Cove, and the siding in JP, they're not wired yet. So this is why this part is not live here, but the rest of it is live. So now other functions on there. There's the slide detector. Now, in real life, whenever the slide detector is activated, it will actually blink like this here, and it'll tell the dispatcher that there's something wrong. The slide detector has been activated, so stop the train. And the dispatcher would have a crew go over and inspect the track and make sure that everything is okay, and he would then reset the slide detector. So on my layout, I do have a slide detector fence. I plan to have a slide detector fence on my layout, but it's not going to actually be functioning. But I thought it was a neat option to have on the CTC machine. The other light that you see here, it's the spur lock. This will actually work. On my layout, there's a few spurs that are coming right off the main line. I explained one of those in the episode 5. Now, once the lock has been taken into manual mode on the spur lock, this light here will be blinking, letting the dispatcher know that the switch is lined in the reverse position and the lock is unlocked, so that it confirms that there's a crew that's working in the siding, in the spur, switching cars. Now, of course, for the crew to be able to do that, they need clearance from the dispatcher before, so the dispatcher would actually lock the access to the block where this spur is located. So the dispatcher would actually lock the signals for each in both direction on each end, so that no opposing traffic, no other traffic can go into that block and have a dangerous situation for the crew that's switching. This is another option that is on my CTC machine, and I'll try to show you all of that in just a bit. Other switches down there, some of these are not in use. They're just there because they were on the prototype, but I have no use for them. The one thing that I did, I put the reset, I put it on a key. So in order to turn the CTC machine on and off, it's a matter of, you require a key to operate the CTC machine, which I think is a neat feature. It's not prototypical, but I thought it was kind of fun. There's another switch on there that's not at all prototypical. It's called monitor. And this is because I have a monitor up here. Let me just turn this thing on here. There you go. I have a monitor so I can when I'm having operating sessions, which I will have in the future. I didn't have any operating sessions yet, but I will be the dispatcher here, and I'll be able to see everything that's going on the layout. So there's a bunch of cameras downstairs, so that I can see the yards. Like, this is Oak Ridge right there, and this is one end of Campbellstoke, and this here's the other end of Campbellstoke, and on this side you have Delos, and then Taganish. So there's a bunch of cameras downstairs, so I can monitor what's going on there if I'm not sure of where the train is. Because on my CTC machine, one thing that I did not do is I am not detecting the mainline tracks between the OS sections, which is something that's totally not prototypical. Usually it is detected, but it was getting like way too complicated. So I figured, I'll just work with the controlled location, and that's enough for me. But at least I can see where the trains are and what's going on downstairs. So let me just switch here to I set the camera up for a zooming in on a one controlled location, which is at the end of Chataway Falls. So that is control location number 7 on the CTC machine, which is this one right here. So Chataway Falls and 7. So this here is the row of levers that I'll be working with for this demonstration here. Okay, so let me try to set up for the demonstration. All right, let's see if this works. I think you can see the monitor, and yeah, you can see a little bit of the CTC machine there. All right, let me give this a shot here. Now what I'll do is I'll power up the trusty CVP products CTC not CTC or DCC system, and I'll call up locomotive 7757, which is the yard switcher downstairs. And of course this system is fabulous. It works. I can walk outside, be in the middle of the street, and I can still control my locomotives downstairs. CVP products, and these are the ops throttles. Very simple throttles for operators. My operators, the few guys that came over to operate, really like these. It's simple. The operators cannot mess up anything in terms of DCC programming, because this is simply for controlling the trains, and it's fabulous. Now, okay, I have my locomotive. It's probably on right now. I can't really hear it from upstairs. Now, I'll try to have it. I don't know which direction it's supposed to go. I'll just try. Now, what you're going to see, you'll see the train will be coming in this direction, and it'll occupy this control location right here. Now, once the train occupies the control location, what will happen, and what happens on real CTC machines, is you'll see control point 7 here. The light will turn on, and you'll hear the OS bell. You'll hear a ding that will tell the dispatcher, whoops, there's an occupancy here. Now the turnout will not change. Nothing will change here, but the signal, right now the signal is favoring right-bound traffic, and this will fall to neutral, or actually it'll fall to absolute stop. The entire location will drop, as they say. So this light here will blink, letting the dispatcher know you have an occupancy and all your signals are in the absolute stop position. So let's give this a try here. Hopefully I'm in the correct direction. We'll know soon enough. I think not. Let me try that again. That's one for the blooper reel. Okay, let me try that again here. I just reversed the locomotive. Let's see here. We should see. It's just a small train. It's the yard switcher that's pulling 3 cars onto the main line, and will ask the dispatcher to throw the switch to access the main line. So there you go. The train, the switcher is now entering the controlled location. There's the bell. There's the occupancy on the controlled location. And there's your signals that just all turn to red. So if we were downstairs, and I'll try to do this in sequence, you would see that the signals just dropped, and the train is traveling across the OS section. Okay, now from what you've just seen in the field, you must have noticed the train occupied the control location and the signal dropped to stop, dropped to all red. And it stayed that way even if the train had cleared the block. Now, in real life, this is how it's done, and now it is up to the dispatcher to reset the control location and clear the signals. Now, this train has moved on to the main line, and it's now waiting for the switch and the signal to access the yard. So, as a dispatcher, what I would do is line the switch in reverse position, line the traffic. The train is here right now. I want this train to go left to go into the yard, so line the traffic left. I have confirmation here that the traffic is lined left. Nothing happened in the field. The signal is still at absolute stop downstairs on the layout at control location 7. The switch is not turned yet until I hit the send code. Now, once I hit the send code button, you will hear the coding that I'm talking about. Once the coding is stopped, the action, this code is traveling 36 miles to the control location. It's doing its thing, and then it's sending a confirmation. So that takes a while to get done. Once the confirmation comes back, this row here will all turn to black. It'll all turn off, and then it'll turn on, confirming the correct turnout position, which should be yellow here, and signal traffic direction, which should be, the red should be on the left side here. So let's press the send code button. Here we go. Funny. There you go. Now the code did not exactly go through. As you can see here, I still have a problem with the signals. The signals are still in the absolute stop position. So I will just resend the code. Sometimes that happens in real life. It happens on my CTC machine. I did not plan for that. It just happens. So here we go. We'll try that again. You see the entire row goes to black. And now you have confirmation that the switch is reversed. Traffic is lined for left-bound traffic. So the train will now proceed across the control location and into the yard. So let me get this train across here. And the moment the car occupies the control location, same thing will happen. You'll have the bell sound, you'll see the occupancy here, and the signals will go to absolute stop. Let's see if that happens. And it is entering now, and there you go. So the train is now occupying the OS section, which you have confirmation here. And for as long as the train is going to be on this section, this light here should be on. Of course, it flickers a little bit because there's the spacing between the wheels of the cars and the axles, which have the resistors for the detection system. This is something I'm trying to correct here. I'm working with Calvin at Circuits for Tracks to get something that would eliminate this flickering here. But the train is on the control location, so there's an occupancy. The dispatch normally would not see this. Dispatch only sees his board here. So he has to know if the train is cleared. So there you go. Train is cleared. There's no more occupancy on the location, but the signals have dropped to red, and it's up to the dispatcher to reset the signals. Let's see this happening in the field in real time. Okay, so this is kind of fun, isn't it? Sorry if I'm out, if I'm out of breath. It's quite a long walk from here to mile 36 and back. But like I was saying, this is kind of fun, but this is not the entirety of it. There's even more. There's another situation that can happen where you might have a crew that needs some what is called some block time or some track time. This happens when a crew needs to do some switching, and the switching is either between controlled locations on the main line or on the controlled location itself. What I'll simulate right now is a switching crew in the yard. I will be traveling to the other end of Chataway Falls, and the switching crew needs to work on partly on the main line, partly in the yard, partly in the siding. Now, instead of asking for the RTC or the dispatcher to clear out the OS every time and give the proper signal every time and line up the switch every time, the dispatchers have a lot of traffic. They don't have time for that. So what the dispatcher would do normally is he would block the controlled location to the signals would be blocked to absolute stop, and he would lock the switch from this end so that the switch cannot be thrown by the dispatcher. He would give the authority to the crew to take the switch off power, which means that the crew would remove the control in the field, the control from the dispatch, and they would take control in the field of the turnout. And with a written authority it's been written by the dispatcher, it's being sent by radio, and it's being copied by the crew. The dispatcher would give the authority to use this controlled location, and the signals which would be dropped to red are suspended. And this is done for a certain amount of time. Like the dispatcher would say, let's say that right now it's 14:40. Dispatcher would say, well, call RTC before 15:15. So you have about 35 minutes to do your job. So this is what I'm simulating here, and how this is done. First of all, the dispatcher will lock the OS section. So by doing this here, and you'll hear the bell, I'm creating an occupancy on the block here, on the controlled location. This is voluntary. I want the signals to drop. Now the signals have dropped, so I'll block the signals. Now the signals are locked to red. I'll block the switch. The switch is now locked. It cannot be operated from the dispatcher's panel. Now the controls are transferred over to the crew in the field. So this is the dispatcher's part in this job here, and we will walk back to mile 32 this time. So I'll see you in a bit. Oh, okay folks, here we are at mile 32. I definitely need to hire some people when I'm doing these videos. That's a lot of walking from the dispatcher in Oak Ridge all the way to mile 32 on the Sanmore Sub here. But here you have the OS section on mile 32 where the dispatcher has currently locked all signals to absolute stop, and with the authority with the rule 566, the signals are now suspended so the crew can run the red light without being penalized. Now what I forgot to mention is that because the crew will be working on the block on this side of the OS section and also on the other side of the OS section, the dispatcher would actually lock all access, all the signals to these blocks for any traffic. He would lock them to absolute stop so that no traffic can enter these blocks, because the crew here, they have some track time and they have absolute authority over this territory right here. Now that the crew have their permission, what they need to do is to take this switch off power. And what I've done for all the OS sections on my layout is I have this off power control, which is actually locked, because in real life those are locked, of course. And on my layout I have 14 locks that have the exact same key here. So my operating crews have one key, which is their switch key. It's called the switch key, and it's to unlock these padlocks here. So I can't do that with holding the camera here, so I'll just put the camera down for a minute. I'll unlock this and I'll be right back. Oh, okay, I'm back. All right, now I have unlocked this lock here, and now we have access to the switch mechanism. Now, as you can see right now, the power for the turnout is set to remote. It's usually this would be the dispatcher would have the control. Now the dispatcher just locked everything up, so we may now take this into manual mode. Now that we're in manual mode, we have the control over the turnout here. Now I need to line this turnout for reverse, so I'll just flip this here to reverse. So I am now lined up, and the crew can now access over the switch back and forth as many times as they want. They can do all their work. After they're done, and this is written here in plain sight here inside the panel, you have to line the switch back to normal position, center off, then give controls back to the dispatcher. Once that is done, you can now call RTC and cancel your work permit, and the dispatcher will then realign the switches and clear the signals. so that you can either leave to access the main line or continue on your way. Okay, well, there you go. That's a little bit of a demonstration on how this signaling system works. Uh, there's uh, there's more to it when it comes to operations, of course. I mean, there's all the paperwork, all the authorities, the operating bulletins, and everything else, which is not, I'm just giving you a basic idea of how the CTC machine works, but the dispatcher's job is a lot more involving than just turning levers. There's also one thing that's missing to my RTC right now is the communications. I purchased a base radio and some handheld radios for the operators downstairs. The base will be set up here on top of the CTC machine. So that's all missing right now. I still have a few parts to purchase to get it all set up, but that's going to be part of the operations also. Other things that I've been working on that I'm not showing, that I'll be showing and then probably the next episode will be the progress on the layout. I have not done a lot on the layout except for the fascia, because the fascia needs to be built as I go along with my signals and my wiring. Yes, you can imagine it's all part of the wiring. But I have not done a lot on the layout, as you can imagine, because this has been pretty involving. But I will have eventually an episode on the progress on the layout. Okay, so I guess I'll wrap things up by saying thank you for watching. And you can, like I said, don't forget to look me up there in the O-Scale Resource Magazine. Follow the articles for those of you who are interested in making your own. It'll be described and hopefully easy enough to follow and to build. So I guess I'll see you trackside. See you next time.